For nearly 15 years, Utah has attracted national attention and accolades for leading out on the immigration issue known as an effort as the Utah Compact.
120 leaders in government, business, and community signed the compact back in 2010 to try to influence the tone and the guiding principles of immigration policy. Deanie Wimmer has been looking into what impact the compact has had on our state. Deanie, what did you find?
Dan and Ashley, the question we've been asking is it relevant now? That's what our team will be exploring all this week as we focus on Immigration 2025, the dream divided. Tonight, the original signers of the compact tell us why they still see its importance today. It was a remarkable moment given the political landscape of 2010. The immigration debate grew increasingly hostile. Our neighbor to the south, Arizona, passed a law that obligated police to determine someone's immigration status if there was reasonable suspicion a person was in the country illegally.
Everybody across America is watching Arizona right now, and the violence is off the chart.
That contention actually motivated leaders in Utah to find a more tempered approach.
And you could feel some of the same turmoil, controversy, unrest that was being felt in Arizona coming to Utah. And Utah leaders didn't want that.
Let's establish what we think are the important principles that ought to be followed with immigration reform.
Community, business, and religious leaders spent months working on wording, and more than 100 organizations signed the final document.
It set Utah apart.
It certainly did set Utah apart.
We stood out as a state to say, we're going to be reasonable in our approach.
The 5 guiding principles of the Utah Compact for Immigration Reform: federal solutions, law enforcement, support for families, the economy, and a free society.
Should we keep families together? Absolutely. Should we enforce the rule of law? Absolutely. Can we do it in a compassionate way? Yes.
That Utah way, forging our own policy path, set a tone for lawmakers, and the compact put Utah in the national spotlight.
It was praised by the left, it was praised by the right, and then there were a lot of states that tried to replicate it.
Including Texas, Florida, Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas.
What I hear people say...
Fast forward to today, is there still broad support for the Utah Compact? The governor says yes.
Utah Compact, do you still support it?
I do. Yeah, I believe in the Utah Compact. I believe in the reasons behind it.
But others aren't so sure.
We've shifted away, perhaps, from the principles of the compact.
Some original signers are calling for another signing of the Utah Compact to offset the negative rhetoric.
I think it would be good if we could reaffirm once again that that's the Utah way.
The Utah way may not be enough to bring leaders back to the signing table, but economic realities might.
Has it impacted business in Utah?
It stabilized our workforce, which is so critical to our economy.
As one of the fastest growing states, economists say we need immigrants.
Immigrants are a huge part of our economy.
There are more than 304,000 immigrant residents in Utah that contribute $1.2 billion in state and local taxes. The Salt Lake Chamber says immigrant entrepreneurs bring in $650 million to our state's economy. Recognizing the impact, state lawmakers tried to follow up on the Utah Compact with laws that allowed migrant visas and work permits, but they were challenged in federal court on the grounds they overstepped federal jurisdiction. And that underscores the need for federal policy on immigration. And that's where they say the federal government needs to do their job. And tomorrow night, we will ask our congressional leaders about that very topic. In fact, this whole week, we'll have coverage of immigration, the dream divided, at 10 o'clock. Such an important issue. Hope you'll join us.
Thank you, Deanie. And to watch KSL's original coverage of this issue back in 2010 when the Utah Compact was first created, you can scan this QR code here to a playlist, and you can check out those original stories on the KSL YouTube page.
This week, we are looking at a uniquely Utah way of approaching the sticky issue of immigration. It is known as the Utah Compact.
The first of its 5 principles spells out that immigration is a federal issue, not a state. But with so much not being done at the federal level, is there still hope for solutions? News specialist Daniel Woodruff went to Washington, D.C. to find out.
It's a beautiful spring day in the nation's capital, where Utah's newest U.S. Senator is busy settling in to his new job.
If I had a bill, if I had something, they'd come and talk to me.
But John Curtis is not new to Washington.
I hope to be a good congressman for you, too.
He's been in Congress since 2017 and has seen firsthand the failure to address immigration in any meaningful way.
Are you frustrated seeing Congress essentially abdicating one of its major responsibilities?
I can't tell you that I'm more frustrated about anything as much as that. It's incredibly frustrating. It's one of the biggest disappointments of my time here.
This goes back long before Curtis. The last time Congress passed any major immigration reform was the 1980s. Since then, there have been many ideas about how to fix the system, some of which Curtis supports.
But right now, there's huge criticism. Anytime you put your name on a bill, people will find something wrong with it, and I'm telling you, they come and they want to whack your head off.
But ultimately, it's the federal government's job to solve immigration. The Utah Compact states, "We urge Utah's congressional delegation and others to lead efforts to strengthen federal laws and protect our national borders."
Do you feel like the compact still applies today?
I do.
I love the Utah Compact because it hits all the key points.
All 4 House members from Utah tell me that document is still relevant.
I think the most relevant part of the compact is that it recognizes that it's a federal concern.
We need to work on a legal immigration process, and that's a lot of what the Utah Compact talks about is economic incentives and treating people as humans.
The compact calls for policies that keep families together, respect the rule of law, and maintain Utah's welcoming and business-friendly reputation.
I think the Utah model, the Utah way, would be a good place to have part of that conversation.
But actually fixing the country's immigration system hasn't happened. Utah's newest member of Congress, Representative Mike Kennedy, thinks that's unfortunate.
We need a coalition of willing people able to think clearly about a really complicated issue, not continue to use it for political fundraising as a political football. And embarrassingly, both sides have done that over generations.
I don't know what was holding it up before I got here, but I know in the time I've been here, it's been a matter of getting the border under control first, and we're doing that.
Representative Celeste Malloy supports President Trump, who campaigned heavily on immigration, promising mass deportations. Since the president took office, illegal border crossings have fallen sharply.
We have an administration that's controlling it.
I also wanted to ask Utah Senator Mike Lee about this issue, but despite my repeated requests, he never agreed to an interview. On social media, Utah's senior senator has cheered the president's immigration policies, some of which have attracted controversy, like the high-profile accidental deportation of a man to El Salvador. The Trump administration also ended a rule prohibiting immigration raids in schools, hospitals, and churches. A Deseret News Hinckley Institute of Politics poll shows 58% of Utah voters oppose allowing ICE to enter schools. Utahns also oppose raids on hospitals and especially places of worship.
The Trump administration is heavily focused right now on identifying folks that are here legally but have committed crimes.
That's why Representative Blake Moore and Representative Burgess Owens both feel undocumented immigrants who don't fall in that category shouldn't worry.
I don't think that people should be concerned about someone coming peacefully to a church and somebody coming after them. We don't have the resources for that. I don't think we have the desire to do that.
With President Trump still newly in office, no one in Utah's all-Republican delegation is jumping to criticize his moves on immigration.
I think it's too soon to start saying what's working and what's not. Let's watch the process play out a little bit.
Still, can the complex issues surrounding immigration ever be fixed?
I am hopeful. I'm hopeful because I believe in the steps that we're taking right now to make sure we're getting the border under control.
And this is a hard thing, and we need to find a solution.
As for Curtis, he has a much bigger voice now in the Senate than he did in the House.
I know you're still, I guess, a freshman senator.
We're sitting here in my temporary office.
We're in the basement.
We're in the basement, yeah.
Based on your seniority.
Yeah.
But as you gain seniority, and you have a larger voice now than you did, are you optimistic you can make a difference in this realm?
Optimistic or not, I'm going to try.
In Washington, D.C., Daniel Woodruff, KSL 5 News.
Daniel, thank you. The second principle of the Utah Compact focuses on the role of local law enforcement.
Tomorrow night on KSL 5 News at 10, we're going to take you to Moab for that perspective. Join us then.
Utah law enforcers find themselves in the middle of the debate on immigration. Tonight, it's their role and perspective we're exploring through KSL series Immigration 2025, The Dream Divided.
Danielle Rivera is on the road in Moab with more on law enforcement and the Utah Compact.
The Utah Compact says local law enforcement resources should focus on criminal activity, not civil violations of federal code. We asked Moab police if that guiding principle still rings true for them today.
Go, go, go.
No grass or team colors.
Come on, little ones.
But don't let this game on wood chips and dirt fool you.
These are sandlot rules.
The competitors? Kids who spend time at Moab's Multicultural Center. And local police officers.
It's small. It's neighborly. You've got everyone knows everybody.
Police Chief Lex Bell says it was staff at the center who told him how changes to federal immigration policy were making some people feel.
We get people coming in and asking questions or, expressing that they are afraid.
So it kind of broke my heart to hear that they were afraid now, or that anyone was afraid to call us for help.
In the tight-knit tourist town that welcomes visitors from all over the world, Bell says fear of contacting or cooperating with police hurts everyone's safety.
If we don't have people willing to be witnesses, then there are going to be some really bad people that get away with some bad things.
That's why Bell says he put out a statement in February, as did many Utah law enforcement agencies, letting folks know that his department is focused on the safety of all community members.
It was very reassuring, yeah.
Reaction online was mixed.
Were you surprised by the negative feedback?
I actually was.
Signaling a split among Utahns, one reflected in a recent poll for Deseret News. 48% of Utahns say undocumented immigration makes them less safe. 31% say it has no impact.
Fear that undocumented people are responsible for a disproportionate percentage of crime in our communities is a factor driving conversations around immigration policy. But what do the numbers actually show? That's complicated. Research often relies on incarceration records because that's where a person's legal status is recorded.
Undocumented immigrants make up 5% of Utah's prison population, and that's consistent with what KSL reported back in 2010. So how does that compare to the state's population? Well, it's hard to say exactly, but the Center for Migration Studies estimated about 100,000 undocumented immigrants called Utah home in 2022, which is about 3% of the state's population.
I don't believe it's ever a question I've asked anyone.
In the day-to-day work of policing Moab, Sergeant Monty Reisenhoover says immigration status isn't his focus.
It's not really relevant in the moment.
And that's consistent with the Utah Compact's guidance to focus on criminal, not civil violations. But not everyone in Utah agrees with that approach. Asked whether Utah law enforcement should help deport immigrants whose only infraction was crossing the border without documentation, 56% said yes.
We're not federal law enforcement, so we don't enforce federal law.
This year, the legislature passed a law requiring sheriffs to report undocumented immigrants serving time to ICE.
It's critical that we're cracking down on crime.
We do try to do some outreach.
We asked Kane County Sheriff Tracy Glover whether the new law makes Utahns safer.
In Kane County, it literally won't change anything.
As president of Utah's Sheriff's Association, Glover has talked to sheriffs across the state about jail operations. He says notifying federal authorities is already common practice.
I've not found a jail that hasn't been making notifications.
But that doesn't mean they're looking for immigration violations.
I don't want people to think we're out doing sweeps or roundups or those kind of things. That's not really our job.
But one sheriff's department is making immigration enforcement a bigger part of their job. Washington County told us they're partnering with ICE to identify undocumented people in their jail and joining with ICE for a task force. Utah is dotted with towns and cities where law enforcers must balance their official duties with maintaining the community's trust.
The political environment is what it is. We can't affect that too much. We need to be as steady as we can be.
Steady and focused on the mission of public safety for all.
There's no room for people to be afraid to contact us for help.
We reached out to ICE for this report, but did not hear back. In addition to upholding the rule of law, the Utah Compact supports policies that don't unnecessarily separate families. Tomorrow at 10, KSL explores that complicated balance. Mike and Deanie,
All right, Daniela, thank you. And this is the third report in KSL's Immigration 2025, the Dream Divided series. And if you would like to catch up, you can scan this QR code and it'll take you to the previous stories on our YouTube page.
You'll also find all of our original coverage of this issue in 2010 when the Utah Compact was created.
More than 300,000 Utahns are immigrants.
Yeah, and tonight, as we continue our Immigration 2025 series, News Specialist Garna Mejia examines how complex policies impact families in Utah.
Inside this Utah home, the Diaz family is raising their children. The couple came to the United States about 5 years ago, seeking political refuge from Venezuela.
The situation in the country became really bad. We were persecuted by the people from the government.
Fear is why they asked KSL not to use their first names, but Utah is where they found safety and a new faith. As a teenager, the wife had a dream. She saw a big lake surrounded by snow-covered mountains, and a voice spoke to her.
God told me, in this place, I show you my church. And I told to my husband, this is the place of my dreams. I didn't even know this is the place, it's the kind of a slogan for LDS church. But that is the feeling that I have when I arrive here.
Mrs. Diaz's parents returned to Venezuela several weeks ago. They're currently in hiding, so we won't show their faces. They came to Utah 2 years ago under the Biden administration's humanitarian parole program. But recently, the Trump administration announced plans to reverse course for some 500,000 people. The parents decided to self-deport.
We decided as a family that it was better because we didn't want to break the law. We didn't want to do something that is wrong because we respect the country.
And they aren't the only ones. Recently, KSL reported on 3 other families in Mill Creek who received letters telling them they have a week to leave the country. Their neighbors came together to speak out in their support.
Unimaginable that the government that we love would do this to people we love.
The idea of getting out all the bad guys, I think a lot of people can get behind that. But it feels like it's just gone, they've taken it too far.
That sentiment gets to the heart of what the Utah Compact is all about.
They're principles that make sense, especially for our Utah community. Principles that we've always had in the state of Utah, I think hit on both sides of the argument, that there needs to be enforcement of law, but at the same time, there needs to be consideration for other human aspects.
The Utah Compact was created by business and community leaders in 2010, urging Utah's delegation to adopt 5 principles on immigration, including a focus on the importance of families and opposing policies that unnecessarily separate them. They want to champion policies that support families and improve the health, education, and well-being of all Utah children. The recent changes in immigration policies have legal experts like immigration attorney Jonathan Shaw scrambling as communities grapple with new realities.
People with criminal records being arrested and deported. That's happening. We're also seeing anybody else in different circumstances being picked up as well.
One of the challenges immigrant families face is a highly nuanced immigration system that is widely considered to be outdated or broken. As immigration advocate Siriac Alvarez Valle explains.
I think it's important to realize that a lot of our families are mixed status.
According to the American Immigration Council, just over 300,000 Utahns are immigrants. Roughly 1/3 are naturalized U.S. citizens, while another third are considered undocumented, meaning they have no protection from deportation.
We came to work, try to be good citizens.
Such is the case of this family from Mexico. They came to Utah nearly 10 years ago in search of the American dream, but for them, there is no path to a legal status. The husband works in construction, the mother in janitorial services. They pay their taxes and hope to one day have a way out of the shadows.
Trying to get in quote unquote like line, right, to try to get a status, but haven't been able to do so.
The Diaz say they support President Trump's plans to deport criminals, but they're concerned about policies that mislabel or insinuate that all immigrants are criminals.
Because not all of us are criminal.
As the conversation on immigration continues, one thing is certain. The policies that take shape will have a ripple effect on communities across Utah.
Our country is built upon immigrants coming here and contributing and becoming a part of us.
For KSL 5 News, I'm Garna Mejia.
Thanks, Garna. Immigration policy has a direct impact on the economy of Utah.
Yeah, tomorrow night we focus on that aspect of the Utah Compact as our Immigration 2025, the Dream Divided series continues.
In recent weeks, local Latino businesses have reported a downturn in business, largely tied to concerns about national immigration policies.
Yeah, 15 years ago, many business leaders signed the Utah Compact because of economic concerns. Deanie Wimmer focuses on that aspect tonight in our series, Immigration 2025, The Dream Divided.
Any analysis of immigration's impact on Utah has to take into account the growing role non-U.S. born workers have on our state's economy.
You see, we need to take a lot of these off if we're ever going to get a big peach.
Peaches, apples, and cherries are starting to blossom here in Santa Quin. At Cherry Hills Farms, pruning and a plan leads to success.
I'm just a farmer, part owner with all my brothers.
And Curtis Rowley's plan doesn't work without the federal H-2A guest worker program, employing these seasonal workers legally, the majority from Mexico.
That's the only way we can get the work done, is through that program.
Both in Santa Quin and in this orchard in Hurricane, all the laborers at Cherry Hill Farms are on H-2A visas. Rowley says the plan is to employ a total of 50 to 60 seasonal workers.
There's just no other alternative for us.
But that alternative isn't an option in many industries, even in other areas of agriculture. For dairy farms, there's nothing similar.
If you have a dairy, there is not a current year-round guest worker program. It doesn't exist.
And perhaps more than any other industry, farmers in America are living on a thin line. Val J. Rigby of the Utah Farm Bureau.
We have a lot of uncertainty when it comes to labor. We need people to do the work. Let's provide a mechanism that we can do that.
We don't have a surplus of labor. We have a shortage of labor in this state. And so that makes immigrant labor even more important.
Original Utah Compact signee Natalie Gochner says workers are essential if Utah is to maintain its lofty position for growth, business, and the economy.
You'll find that immigrant labor is a big part of the construction industry, the road building industry, certainly the agricultural industry.
Central to the Utah Compact is this take on the economy. We acknowledge the economic role immigrants play as workers and taxpayers.
And I think it's incumbent on state leaders to make sure that we recognize the importance of those workers before we take any kind of, strident actions that could hurt our economy.
According to the American Immigrant Council, foreign-born workers make up nearly 12% of Utah's workforce and 19.6% of the construction workforce. A sizable number are undocumented and pay significant dollars in state and local taxes.
And in Utah, we see that undocumented immigrants, population of roughly 92,000 people, paid just over $235 million in state and local revenues in Utah.
Do you think most people would be shocked to hear that?
Yeah, it's oftentimes pretty...
Marco Guzman co-authored a nationwide study on the impact of undocumented workers for the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Its intent to educate people and policymakers.
Undocumented immigrants help the economy in ways that they may not realize, but their impact, should they be deported en masse, will ripple across the country.
Nationally, tax dollars paid by undocumented workers look like this.
About $59 billion to the federal government, about $37 billion of that paid to state and localities.
At Latino-owned businesses throughout the state, the economics of immigration are a daily reality. People have been enjoying Ingrid Santaella's food for 20 years at Sabor Latino in South Salt Lake.
Everybody like it.
And Daniela Acuna loves her mom's cooking too.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's nothing like mother's food, right?
But since the beginning of the year, business has dropped off considerably.
Yeah, everybody's scary. People are scared that things are going to happen. They're going to be deported. You just never know.
In recent weeks, things have picked up. But for many in the Latino community, the uncertainty remains.
It's basically everybody's in limbo. The businesses are in limbo because, like, you don't know if you're gonna wake up and your status is gonna be taken away.
Though she was born in Venezuela, Daniela is now a U.S. citizen.
You know, I might not be born here, but Utah's my home.
And despite their fears, both she and her mom share pride and optimism.
And my mom has a saying, it's in Spanish, lo bueno somos más. Lo bueno somos más, which just means we the good are more. So like we the good people are more. We're not all criminals. We're hardworking people.
The final principle of the Utah Compact is called a free society, and it focuses on our state's history of inclusion and a place that welcomes people of goodwill. Tomorrow night at 10, Courtney Johns will explore that topic.
Yeah, I believe in the Utah Compact. I believe in the reasons behind it.
The important principles that ought to be followed with immigration reform.
Should we enforce the rule of law? Absolutely. Can we do it in a compassionate way? Yes.
I think it would be good if we could reaffirm once again that that's the Utah way.
It was drafted to set the tone for immigration policy in Utah. 15 years later, does the Utah Compact still hold true today? That's a question we have been exploring all week long here in our Immigration 2025, a Dream Divided series. Utah Compact focuses on 5 principles here for immigration reform: federal solutions, law enforcement, support for families, the economy, and free society. It's that final principle, a free society, some leaders say is at the heart of Utah's unique culture, history, and spirit of inclusion. KSL's Courtney Johns explains.
The 5th principle of free society says we must adopt a humane approach to this reality and be a place that welcomes people of goodwill. So we wanted to see how well our state is living up to that promise 15 years later.
Walking hand in hand.
She's amazing.
Guillermo Mendez falls more in love with his wife every day.
This is a person, this is the one.
Looking back on the years, they can't help but laugh at what people thought when Guillermo and Socorro said they were going to get married and move to America 42 years ago.
My mom told me, I bet you that you're going to do it just for 6 months and then you're going to come back to our house.
Together they flew to America.
So I left everything, my job, my family, everybody.
They planned on coming back after they saved up enough money for a down payment on a house in Mexico. But by the time they had saved up enough money, they also had 2 children.
We know that we can give them a better life here in USA.
Now they're both U.S. citizens, building a life in the Utah community, which they say has mostly been welcoming, but will always have a small barrier.
I think it's a bigger barrier if you don't speak the language.
A barrier Myra Sanchez has been trying to break for 8 years.
If we don't have a voice, our experience is very impacted.
Myra had her first child when she was 20, knowing little English and even less about Utah. Now a mother of 9, she sees more resources.
It was all those things that I didn't have.
But finding those things, or even knowing they're available, is still a challenge to women new to the country, which is why Myra's made it her mission to help.
I have to do something that is different.
Founding Comunidad Materna in Utah, she's dedicated her life to supporting infant and maternal health.
Myra was excited to share her story with us, but that wasn't the case for most immigrant organizations we reached out to. In an email, one told us they're staying under the radar because of the current political climate, a climate that has tainted the way Myra sees the Utah Compact.
The latest political environment, it creates a barrier.
Governor Cox told KSL's Deanie Wimmer he still supports the compact, which he says includes support for federal deportation of undocumented immigrants who commit crimes.
Obeying the law is part of having the society and the freedoms that we want.
He says Utah's decision to enforce the law in a compassionate way is what makes this compact unique.
There are people on one side, right, that just see the law and order piece without any compassion. And then there are people on the other side that see, we just want compassion, but we don't care what the law says. And I think that's a false choice. And I think that's what's led us to this moment.
A polarizing moment Cox says still shows the compact is alive and strong.
I would
beg to differ.
Father Martin Diaz says a lot has changed since he proudly signed the Utah Compact 15 years ago.
We've lost the value of the dignity of each of the people, of each person, each immigrant person.
But he still has hope.
Even in the darkest of times, I know that goodness will win.
He says a good step forward for our leaders would be getting rid of dishonest rhetoric, reaffirming the compact, and sharing what has been given to the community.
The goodness that has been done by all of the immigrants that have come here, story after story. They know it to be true.
Stories.
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿En qué le puedo ayudar?
Like Guillermo's, who is now a deacon at the Cathedral of the Madeleine.
Jesús con sus discípulos y les dijo. So we will start giving what God gave us to us.
Blessed with a loving family.
3 kids and 10 grandkids.
Celebrating with his wife how far they have come.
La bendición de Dios Todopoderoso.
By lifting up others new to their community.
I feel blessing to be here in Utah.
As our reporting this week has shown, not everyone may agree on how the principles of this Utah Compact should shape immigration policy, but they hope they can still be a guide for thoughtful conversation.
All right, Courtney Johns, Courtney, thank you. And we have posted the full interview with Governor Cox online.